Welcome to worship with the Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria. My name is Reverend Jennifer Innis. It is my great joy to be the minister with this congregation of people of all ages at all stages of life as we gather on this Labor Day weekend under a blue, true dream of sky. This is a beloved community striving to live its mission of embracing freedom, loving wholeheartedly, growing in mind, body, and spirit, and adding to the healing of the world. This beloved community is unapologetically progressive in welcoming people of all ethnicities and races, sexual and gender orientations, social and economic situations, politics, and abilities. We also advocate for human rights, and we strive to be good stewards of this earth. And in so living our mission, we recognize the network of relationships of which we are a part. For this is the ancestral home of the Peoria people. They and other nations were here long before the first European settlers came down the river. We honor the Peoria people, and when we gather for worship, we honor them for who they were and for who they are today. So I want to thank folks for joining us in person as well as online. One of the lessons of the past few years is how precious it is to be able to gather together, to be with other people, to expand our circles of care and kindness. And so if you are new to us, please help us get to know you. We have an abundance of name tags. We have wonderful greeters and ushers. Also, please stay for visiting after the service. You can come join us for coffee in Fellowship Hall or stay on Zoom for a conversation there. And let me invite you as we are gathering to turn to your respective devices and put them into worship mode, whether that's fuzzy or silent. Thank you. We also have, in case you have a challenge with that, we have a worship mode ministry. So I'm going to say that if you need help with that in the course of things, please ask. We can get you set up. And now I want to offer a couple of announcements. Today is a little bit different for how we do the service. Today is what we call the annual question box service. And this is the moment when we are very much directly creating the service together. You may have, I hope, if you're here in person, had received a little piece of paper along with the order of service. And that is a spot where you can put in whatever question you have, something that you would like me to answer. Life, the universe, and everything, all is possible. And I answer as many questions live in the moment during the sermon time this service. And I also keep the questions, whatever doesn't get answered, because I don't get to all of them at all. And I keep them, and those help inform the services for the year to come. And we'll be collecting those at least during the offering, and then I'll have a quick chance to sort through them during the story. And let's see, also today after the service, we have a lovely class being offered by Greg Barta. He's doing an introduction to pickling and fermenting. We go for all ages, don't we? Pickling and fermenting, that'll be in the kitchen after the service, about 12:30 or so. And I want to invite folks, let's see. So next Sunday is kind of the official beginning of our church year. This is our in-gathering and water communion. It is entitled A Thirsty Beginning. Come, you longing, thirsty souls. And I think that counts for all of us, eh? So what we do as a congregation is bring a bit of water that represents or is from our kind of summer experiences as we've been out in the world in all the ways that we are. And then we bring that in together as we start our new year and collect that as a symbol of our shared community and get ready to go forth. Also, next Sunday is the return of the choir from its summer break. By all means, think about joining the choir. They rehearse 8:45 a.m. before services begin, and there's plenty of opportunities to sing, I tell you. And there's a potluck lunch and splash games after the service next Sunday. So bring something to share, be prepared maybe to get a little wet and have a little fun as well. And now I want to invite Regina Stanley up for our announcement, another special announcement. Okay, Regina is coming in the back. Check it out. Check it out. Oh, look at that. We got people.
Okay. Whew. So, next Saturday, Pekin Marigold Parade. We're going to be marching in it. We want to let everybody know about us. So we are going to, and I can't do this by myself. So I need some help. Need some help carrying the banner, walking, handing out some Skittles, some bubbles. We're going to meet at 9:30. The parade lineup is at Broadway and 14th Street. Kind of, there's like Kroger there. So we'll meet there, and the parade is about a mile long. Whew, I'm out of breath. And so bring a water bottle, wear your UU shirt if you have one. If you don't, just make sure you wear something that's not, political or controversial. And
Welcoming everybody, so that's not political or controversial.
Yes. Yes. So yes, and comfortable shoes. So I hope to see many of you there, and we will spread the UU love around. Thanks. Okay. All right.
So, in case you were wondering, that is our brand new church parade banner that we just got shared and shown this week. It just came in and it's ready for its debut in Pekin. All right. All right. And now, as part of our gathering together, we offer a moment where we can say hello to one another as we begin the service. So I want to invite you to turn and greet your neighbor. We are a covenantal consent-based community, so please ask permission for hugs or handshakes. And I will let you have a little moment of greeting, and then I'll call you back for the opening hymn. Please greet your neighbor. to your spirit and join me for our opening hymn, number 126, Come Thou Fount in Every Blessing. If you like the lyrics or like to have the music in front of you, it's number 126 in the gray hymnal. And so let us sing all the verses. Please be seated. And I want to invite Mary Mahalan Kafar to come offer our opening words.
Good morning, everyone. The opening words is The Longing for Something More by Reverend Gretchen Haley. Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make a space for it, give it its due time, and praise for the wanting it represents, for the longing for something more, some healing hope that remains not yet. We promise no magic, no making it all better, but offer only this circle of trust, the human community that remembers, though imperfectly, that sings and prays, though sometimes awkwardly. The gathering that loves, though not yet enough, we are still practicing after all, still learning, still in need of help. And the partners still are becoming able to receive all this beauty and all these gifts we each bring. Come, let us worship together. Namaste.
And I invite Dave Grebner to offer our chalice lighting.
Our Welcome to Share by Anastasia Birosh. We light this chalice, our welcome to share and our communion to declare. May this flame shine bright and afar to serve as community's lodestar. All are welcome from everywhere.
Reverend Heather Christensen has written that Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. And that vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, many, many small congregations, small congregations. And no matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members, every one of its friends, every one of you, through your commitment of time and energy and resources, helps make that grand vision real. And individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. And so it is our practice to receive an offering during the course of our service as we gather. I want to invite you to express that kind of gratitude for the service that we offer together through a financial gift as we receive the collection. And yet again, practice giving during worship as an intentional, tangible act. And we also practice sharing our plate. So each week, 1/3 of the undesignated offering goes to one of our monthly recipients. And this month, it's, look, it's my book. And that is part of the effort to increase reading facility and passion for learning, passion for engagement in our community. It's one of the ways I know that my children certainly have benefited from that. I know if you have children in the Peoria school system at all, they've certainly benefited from this. So we want to make sure that our children have access to great materials wherever they may live in our Peoria area. So again, one third of our undesignated collection goes to the church, 2/3 goes to the ongoing running of the congregation. Please use the envelopes to make your offering and indicate its use. And you can also turn to the order of service and use the QR code there to make an online donation. Thank you for all the giving that you do, for every bit, because every bit counts. And during the music for meditation, the ushers will pass the collection plates. After the plates have passed, you are invited to come light a candle for what may be in your mind or on your heart. And this also is the moment, if you had a question that you've been able to write down, also the moment to kind of put the questions into the collection plates as well. And now, will the ushers please come forward? spirit of community in which we share and find strength and common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts toward one another, seeking to bring into our circle of concern all who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who are in pain, either in body or in spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. We bring into our circle of care and love all the joys as well, the names, the milestones, all the big things in our lives. For we are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with the universe. We are grateful for the miracle of consciousness we share, the consciousness that gives us the power to remember, to love, and to care. We want to offer the joys and sorrows of our community. And I think I will just begin with one of the notable larger world news items for this week, that of the death of Jimmy Buffett, because he was someone who brought so much joy to this world through his music. So much care and so much wonder and just so much happiness. And I've been seeing people remember and how much he meant to them in the course of this week. And it is something to be so have well served, something that he was passionate about, and also something that so well served so many people in a positive way. I want to offer a note of joy for Kathy McNeil's mom, who is back home with her dad, and they have a nice new place in assisted living. Congratulations. We offer. We have a joy from Isaac Ordaz. He has his first homegrown cantaloupe, and he has brought it to share during coffee hour. So thank you, Isaac. Congratulations. All right. And now we turn to wishes for health and recovery. We offer wishes for health and recovery to Tom McIntyre. He is home and doing well after suffering a small stroke. Let us send our care to Tom as well as his spouse, Martha Herm, as she supports his progress. We also send wishes for health and recovery to David Waisner. He is doing well at home after surgery for an aneurysm. And we offer our care to his spouse, Sherry, as she supports his recovery. And we offer wishes for health to all who came down with COVID after August 20th. I hope folks are doing better. It seems like folks are. Folks who were in this congregation, we had about a dozen people in or connected to the congregation. And if there's any further need, please let me or the caring committee know if there's a way we can support you. So I want to go to a couple of concerns in our larger world. For our community of Peoria, especially in the schools this week, in our larger Peoria community, there have been a number of recent shootings, some of which have been deadly, and related violence. And the concerns about this have also impacted some of the education for our children. I think as a community, we have an opportunity to figure out what is our collective response, knowing that it's not going to be immediately fixed because this didn't happen overnight. But I think as a congregation, we should be saying, what can we do? How can we be participating in this answer? And I would offer the same for the schools in Morton, who are finding, the parents of whom are finding a voice against gender and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, asexual, plus oppression as well. We have an opportunity to show up and to let people have a voice in the way that we say that we do. I also want to offer a note for our larger world, to extend our care to those impacted by Hurricane Idalia as it rolled over Florida and parts of the South. I know this is more common all the time, but still it is something that we need to embrace and widen our circle of care. And let us offer one more moment of quiet for all the joys, the sorrows, the names, the milestones that are among us and remain unspoken. I invite us all to pause and breathe in this moment, because there is no other moment than this one. Let us pause and breathe together. Amen and namaste and blessed be. Let me invite Jessie Laughlin forward for our story.
Our story today is one of wondering, an infinity of questions. Once, there was a little girl named Mariah Mitchell. When she was 2, she asked, "What? What is that? What's this? What are those?" Her parents answered as best as they could. They gave lots of answers, but she always had more questions. Maybe you're familiar with that pattern. When Maria was 3, she started to ask, how? How does this work? How does that happen? How do we know that's how it goes? And again, her parents tried to answer as best as they could. But how? Mariah wanted to know. How do you know? Well, because we look at it. We wonder, and we do experiments. You can do experiments too, they said. And when Mariah was 4, she started to ask, why? Why do boats float? Why does it get dark at night? Why do people wear clothes? And still, her parents tried to answer as best as they could. But no matter how many answers they had, Mariah still had more questions. She asked questions at home, at school, and at the Quaker church that they all attended. She asked questions of everyone she met. Hundreds of thousands of millions of questions. An infinity of questions and one little girl. Mariah had almost as many questions as there are stars. There are hundreds of thousands of millions of stars. An infinity of stars and one little girl. I love the stars, she told her father, and they would peer through a telescope and look further and further into the night sky. And then Mariah would start to ask more questions. Some of those questions her father had answers to, and some he didn't. So Mariah set out to find the answers herself. She studied hard. She read many, many books. She did experiments, and she became an astronomer, a person who studies the stars. When she was 29, she found a new comet that they named after her, the Mitchell Comet. She won awards and gained entry to establishments that hadn't welcomed women before. But Mariah was still full of questions. How do we know God exists? Are all the parts of the Bible true? Why are we here? Some people, they gave her answers. But when she asked, well, how do we know that? They answered, because we do. And that's the way it is. And don't ask any more questions. Mariah did not think those were very good answers at all. But the answers that she was looking for weren't to be found in books or by doing experiments. So she kept asking. And one day, she heard a talk by a Unitarian minister named William Ellery Channing. He did not have the answers either. But that's okay. He said there was room for an infinity of answers to the infinity of questions. And the important thing was to wonder, not to know. So Mariah decided to join the Unitarian Church because those words by William Ellery Channing woke up her mind. And all through her life, Mariah Mitchell asked, what, how, and why? Mariah became a teacher so she could help other people ask their own questions. And sometimes those people found the answers to their questions. And sometimes they didn't. But Mariah Mitchell was happy either way, because the most important thing is to wonder, not always to know. I wonder what questions you'll ask. I wonder if you'll find an answer. I invite the children to join me as we go back for religious education.
So this particular morning, the sermon is something we create together. I have this is the question box sermon, known by many titles, but generally the question box sermon. And I have any number of questions from folks that were gathered live from the congregation. I have a few that were shared with me ahead of time. And any of the questions shared that I don't address, and probably even some that I try to, because some of them are whoppers, will inform some of our conversations in worship and as a congregation as a whole, in fact. So just in case you're wondering, why is Reverend Jennifer looking to us for questions? I think the Mariah Mitchell story is a good example of why we have to look at each other for questions. Doesn't the minister have plenty of things to talk about? Is this her way of getting out of writing a sermon? You think about that one. Well, to answer the second question, yes. Do we have plenty of things to talk about? Absolutely. We've only just begun to talk about and explore the larger message of progressive religion in this time and place. And even I, in my couple of decades plus experience of ministry, I still feel like I've only just begun to talk about and explore all that we can. So to answer the third question, is this her way to get out of writing a sermon? So in case you were wondering, to show up and answer in any kind of meaningful way the questions that you may offer with almost no time to think of them in no way lets me off the hook. It's okay. And that's okay. I'm volunteering. And add to that we do this in the context of worship, and that we need to remain so. This is a worship setting. This is not a discussion group in our conference room, for example. And so just let me offer, this is both fun and serious business. And congregations and Unitarian Universalist ministers, we want the questions from each other. Our congregations choose who will preach and who will lead worship. And once chosen, the minister may say what they want to say as they see it. This is part of our free pulpit tradition. And at the same time, part of the trust is placed in the preaching minister is that we will speak to the lives of the congregation and of the larger faith of which we are a part. And to do so, to be entrusted in this way without ever asking, what are your concerns? What are your big questions? Keeps the minister from a wonderful source of inspiration and information. And asking for your questions is part of how I feel like I live into the covenant that we have together, the promises that we've made and are keeping in the course of our ministry together. So I will answer as many as I can in the usual sermon time. I have my phone here to help me out. We may go a little bit over, that's okay. And then the remainder will help inform our time together. And so let's begin. I want to begin with one. I have a few that were sent ahead. I will get to those second, but I'm going to get to the first one first, which is, and thank you also for writing legibly, really makes a difference. How many different stoles do you have? How many different stoles do you have? Now, in case you're wondering, a stole is what I have around my neck and across my front. And the stoles in our Unitarian Universalist tradition can truly take any form, any decoration, any design, and so on. They're meant to express something meaningful, something that is kind of capturing a moment, something specific, but also usually something larger as well. In this case, for me, the stole kind of goes back has its roots in our Christian heritage, where Jesus had a towel around his neck as he washed the feet of the disciples. So this is part of the function of the stole, is that to put it on is to say, I am in a moment of service with my community. So that's one thing. And the stole that I have today is one that was commissioned by the installation committee from this congregation, and was given to me as a gift to mark the formal beginning of my ministry with this congregation. Back in March 2021, we had been all online, oh my goodness, and we did a little hybrid way to do the installation service up here. And I think maybe still had scaffolding to get these, so I think we still had scaffolding to get the screens in at that time. We were working on it. We were work in progress. And this stole is a lovely interpretation of one of our stained glass windows here in the sanctuary. And so I appreciate that we were able to find an artist to be able to do that. And so it's a wonderful way of kind of visual connection. And I wear it in service as part of that connection. All right. Oh, and how many do I have? There we go. That was the actual question. I have maybe a dozen. All kinds of places they came from, all kinds of colors, designs, seasonal, not seasonal, lots of different ones. And it's meaningful to be able to kind of add to the message of the service by picking out, composing the experience, if you will, including the stole. There's my little theater background as well. Okay, let's see. Let me get to the ones that were sent ahead first. From Lindy Peterson, what is your opinion on the proposed changes to Article 2? I will explain that a little bit to our newcomers. In particular, she asks, I wonder if you think there is an easy way for folks to talk about the new statement of values in the way before we would talk about the 7 principles. All right. So when we refer to Article 2 conversations right now in our association, this is our larger association, the Unitarian Universalist Association, is doing a big revision and exploration of language for how do we express what's important to us as a larger tradition. And because we are, because this is how we work in some ways, we don't put it in a Bible, we put it in bylaws. We put it in bylaws. So we start the beginnings of our bylaws as an association, the denomination, begins with expressing what matters most. How do we gather with each other, our expression of freedom, of exploration, and what are our core values? Now, one of the ways we've been doing that for the past, nearly 40 years at this point, is with the 7 principles and 6 sources in Unitarian Universalism. If you have a gray hymnal in front of you, it's at the front of the book if you're not familiar with them. And they begin with things such as, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and every dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, encouragement to spiritual growth, and so on. And they have been incredibly meaningful for folks to be kind of a way to frame and describe our Unitarian Universalism. And some of them are truly theological statements. One, that we affirm the inherent worth of every person, and affirm that as opposed to saying that, in other theologies, saying that all people need to be saved because they're wretched and grungy and so on and so forth, that their souls are not okay. We affirm saying, we start with saying love, and that each of us has worth. And we also affirm spiritual growth, which means that we are open to constant revelation. Yep, I'll take that. Thank you, Rachel. We affirm that revelation is not sealed, that there is truth to be found in all places, not just one particular set of information or scripture. That's a theological statement as well. And also, the 7th principle, the inherent worth, we are part of the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. We are part of a global, interconnected, powerful existence. So, inherent worth, open to growth, web of existence in which everything is part and parcel. So, we've been working with that kind of frame for nearly 40 years. Well, what's also true is that we don't get attached to any one way of talking about what we value most. Some gets really familiar and makes it a little easier, and can be inspirational and we bounce off it. But In Unitarian Universalism, we don't have one way of articulating what we believe. In fact, we know we benefit from the multitude. So we've been charged with exploring how do we express ourselves now? So this is the Article 2 work, is to say, let's go look at these values. How do we express ourselves now, today? Because we've learned so much more about anti-racism, we've learned so much more about systemic oppression, and we've learned so much more about valuing our earth. What's today? And so we'll learn about more of that in the course of things. But one of the ways we're exploring that language is through our themes in the course of this, the monthly themes. So if you turn to this September newsletter, you will see the themes laid out, and that will give you a sense of those values, and then we'll keep working on them in the course. Where we are now with this process is that our delegates, representatives of all of our congregations, voted in June to go with the initial draft of language, or the draft of language that was created at that time. And we're going to spend this year exploring that language. And then we come to next June, our annual meeting for the General Assembly in our next June, and we'll say whether or not we want to affirm that language and formally add it to the bylaws. So this is a chance to explore. We'll have some more. We've had some conversations already. We'll have some more going in. And if you have more questions, by all means, please ask. Let's see. Let me take a breath, a drink. This is a short question. Okay, the question is short, but the answer is there's a lot. Okay. One is, why should I come to church if I can just Zoom the service? Why should I come to church if I can just Zoom the service? A question for our time. Question for our time, is it not? But you know what? I'm not just going to be the only one who answers this one, because I got this ahead of time. I could think about this. Let me offer to the congregation who is sitting with us right now in person. Why come to church in person, George? The interpersonal socialization. Boy, haven't we learned how valuable that is as a whole society? Yeah, yep. Yes, Mary. Fellowship with each other to uplift and support each other. Mm-hmm. Great. Yes, Dave. Coffee hour. Can I tell you how much I love that when we started to come back, have coffee hour at least outside in person during the heart of the pandemic here, the beginning of it, the most intense part, and that how much people were passionate for coffee hour. Oh my gosh, you all. I'm like, yeah, there we go. That was a sermon by itself, frankly. And we're willing to kind of shiver under canopies and trees to kind of say, we're going to be here together. It's so good. Okay. And the other answers, yes, Kathy. To share what's going on, to help one another, and what's new and how to be involved. Okay, great. Thank you. So, those in fact, did we have one more? I didn't see. Oh, yes, Amanda, go ahead. It is easier for our children to connect everything that's about our church in person versus over Zoom. Yeah. And I have an appreciation because that first year of me being with this congregation, 2020, 2021, all those services, we recorded them ahead of time. If you weren't here, we recorded them ahead of time and then broadcast them on Zoom, but also YouTube and Facebook and so on. So for the first time in mostly my adult life, I didn't have to go to church on Sunday morning for the better part of a year. I can see the appeal. Like, oh, look, it's Sunday morning. I get to get up, hang out, have breakfast with my family. I'm turning on the worship service. I joined the Zoom conversation for coffee hour. And it was great, invaluable, and precious. And So like, I mean, I get it. And I have to say, all of those pieces that we were just naming just now are all why we understand how precious it is, one, to be able to get together and the value of getting together. I think the experience of worship is different when so many of us are in the same room, even when a number of people are also online. It feels different than when I'm at the pulpit and the sanctuary is empty. And I'll also just offer, along those lines, I am so grateful. Somebody asked recently, what's my, how important it is to me, or what's the value of it to have people in the pews. And more people, we want to have like more, as many as possible people, present in the pews. And I just say, my baseline since pandemic is now shifted. I am happy for anybody to be in here. I want to be just around the people because it is so important. Because preaching to a blue dot of a camera is not a congregation. You are much bigger than blue dots, I will say. And I think this is why we create beautiful sacred space, because we know people who came before know the value of that as well. But I say all this also recognizing that one of the other questions here is, how has worship changed? Or recognizing how much worship has changed since the pandemic. And one of those is that we know how important it is to be accessible. And that for some of us, attending service online is the only way we're going to be able to get to it. And that means that we need to offer as many options as we can within our resources and reason. And we have a lot, actually. We need to be as accessible as we can in order for people to be part of the congregation. The number of people, I've been saying this with the board in different ways, we have about 300 members of the congregation right now. 301, I think was the number, 301, Regina nods. And we also have 70, 80 people who are friends of the congregation, regular attendees or regular contributors. And we have any number of children and youth. We have parents and families who are also connected to the congregation. So think about how part of what we're doing as a collective body is holding the scope and size of over 400 people. And that's part of helps when we gather together in person. I know it helps me, and it can help all of us kind of realize, there's a lot more here than I can see. And we have a wide circle to kind of all hold together. So when we have people in person, it's a great way to kind of refresh that and get the diversity of perspective and experience that helps us connect with the larger group. There's much more I could say about that, but I'm going to stop there. All right. Let's see where we are. All right. So here's one. Here's one that is a big question. What do you think happens to us when we die? What do you think happens to us when we die, and how do we live not really knowing? How do we live not really knowing? Okay. And because the question goes on to say, I'm deconstructing my Christian faith, and it's the first time experiencing a death recently. It's the first time I don't have the comfort of thinking they're in a better place now, we'll see them again someday. I don't want to continue to believe this just because it makes me feel better. Yeah. I'll offer that in the, 20 years plus I've been offering the question box service. in a range of congregations all over the country. Nearly every one of those services has included this question, or one very similar to it, because it's one of our deepest questions. Now, if we were in a one-on-one conversation, I would say, well, where do you think? Where are you coming from? And usually that would lead to somebody unpacking a little bit of their religious history and then saying, here's where I seem to be right now. And it's okay if it's a hot mess, because we all are, and that's okay. In Unitarian Universalism, part of what we understand is that we don't know. We are deep and profound questioners, and we know we don't have the answers. There's only, in terms of what happens after we die, we can ponder, and we can, in many ways, come up with some answers that's like, you know what, this I can live with. This seems to make sense. And in Unitarian Universalism, it goes all the way from I am right with Jesus, and I am saved, and I am in his embrace when I die, all the way to, I mean, it's kind of really a 3D sphere. It's not really an either or, but all the way to nothing happens. When I die, I blink out of existence, and that's it. And my body, hopefully I've made arrangements to have it go back into the earth in the least problematic way possible. Or some folks go with reincarnation. Or some folks kind of feel that maybe there's got to be some time of wondering before I am connected again with the holy. We have the full span of those theologies in any given congregation. And what we also talk about in Unitarian Universalism is that we definitely don't, here's what we don't do. We don't say that you are damned to hell. We don't believe in a God that would do that to, and a loving God that would do that to the world. Why? That would impose an infinite punishment on finite mortal creatures. No. We believe in a love. And whether you believe that's a love from God or the power of love that we know we experience as human beings, as we sang in last week's hymn, we rest in this love. From many places, from many sources. So we know we don't go burn in eternal hell. That's what we don't do. How do we live with all the unknowing? We live because we work with what we do know. We work with knowing that we have this life in front of us. We have this one. And there is so much that we can do and be in this one. So let's see what we can accomplish and how we can learn and grow right here and right now. We know we have this. I will also offer in our Unitarian Universalism, if we're going to believe that we are part of an interdependent web of existence of which we are a part, that being a part means in all the states that we can be. Where we came from is part of that state. Where we are now is part of that state. And where we will go when our bodies die is another part of that state. We are profoundly part of everything. That I will offer as well. And I take comfort in that. I like the idea that somehow my grandmother and my great-grandmother or so on are kind of present and with me. even though they've long since left this earth, if you will. And so I try to live up to what I know they believed in and what they wanted for me. And that's a lot. That's partially where I get the comfort. And as you can imagine, there's no one sermon going to cover that one either. We have a lot of different conversations. Let me see if we can do. So we can do one more. Let's see. So I'm going to close with one last question on religious language, if you will. And like I said, there's more things that I can possibly cover in this moment. If it is not required that Unitarian Universalists believe in a God figure, why does a divine figure keep coming up in conversation? If it is not required that Unitarian Universalists believe in a God figure, why does divine figure keeps coming up in conversation? So what I'll offer is that, as I mentioned kind of earlier, that as seekers of truth, and we take a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, that we believe that truth can be found nearly everywhere. That truth is found in many places, from many sources. And we don't have a requirement for a particular understanding of God or the holy or the divine or so on. We have a very big tent theologically, which, in case you were wondering, makes it very interesting to preach. Big tent. What kind of message will serve so many people? What I love, in part, about Unitarian Universalism is that we get to look at practically the full range of religious language, of poetry, of science and nature, of world religions, and so much more. We have access to the broad scale of human discovery as we consider our religious lives, as we consider our personal lives in the congregation. And so there's sometimes something about the word God or the holy or the sacred or the divine or the Buddha or so much more that can express something a little bit differently than any other set of words can express. And, well, okay, Unitarian Universalists, we love a good word. We love maybe 2 words. In fact, we love 10 words. If we can have one, we like 10 at a time. I mean, we love the words. We do. And so, to me, that is part of the play. Part of how exploration works is to be, I'm going to try this on and see how this feels for a while. And I'll offer, and to do so in a way that is thoughtful and responsible. It's not simply kind of a salad bar where you're like, oh, here's all the really tasty, pretty things. I'm going to take just the ones that I like the most, that are my favorite foods. I mean, that's a plate, but every religious language has its source in culture and context and so on. And part of our work is to work with those questions as well as we look at systemic oppression and anti-racism and so on. So we're going to hear lots of different kinds of language from each other, and you're going to hear lots of different kinds of language from me, because that's part of our practice. And sometimes that captures things in a way that's a little bit different than any other way. And what's also true is that for some of us who have some real challenging religious history, or who truly said, divine is not my scene, God is not me, I don't get religious language at all. Yeah, and some of us are going to have a real challenge with that. And I want to invite us each into curiosity and wondering as well. The part of the purpose of different parts of the service, for example, are different ways of entering in and exploring and being in contact and connection. So not every part is going to magically work for every person, but there hopefully is something that speaks to and lets you kind of ponder and feeds you for the week to come. So in our exploration of language, and also, so here's the thing. Religious language does not have to be the purview of any one set of theology either. We have some religious traditions out in our country especially who have given religion a bad name. Can I get a, amen? Right? You have so much in this moment when we're having a social conversation about what is the role and place of our religious institutions. It is in part because you have some religious traditions who are being ugly and actively hating and hurting so many people of our society. And they do it with religious justification. And phooey on them. I'm going to use not that language, There's other language I could use. And we don't have to let them bogart the language. We can claim it for ourselves and explore it for ourselves and then decide we don't have to use all the language all the time, right? But we don't get to let other people determine our language either. So that I will close on. Oh yeah, look for the other sermons to come from each of these. I'm just going to say, wow, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So I want to invite you to rise in body or spirit with me for our closing hymn number 346, because you have been singing with me. Let us sing together. And as we go forth into and continue our wondering, come sing a song with me. chalice is now extinguished, but its light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each of us. Let us carry that flame with each of us as we leave this place and share it with those we know, those we love, and those we have yet to encounter. Our time for questions has ended, and yet our search has only just begun. May we go forth from this place in the spirit of wonder, knowing as we bring the light of truth out into the world, we too will always need space for more light to come in. Let us rejoice that we may make the space in a community such as this, in a company with the ever-present mystery of life. Our worship is ended. Let our service begin.